The license to oppress. An allowance granted to foreign officials in the past, and still granted today, to repair the discomfort caused from working in a disadvantaged location and among the barbaric populations of underdeveloped countries. Blue sky, calm space, green waiting. It was a clear spring day. The rain had washed the leaves of the trees, and the sun was shining brightly. Children were playing, their shouts reviving the memory of nightingales' songs. The streets were lined with trees, blossoming with flowers, couples in love, and wooden benches firmly rooted to the ground, inviting. The air was pleasant and fragrant, filled with magical dust, the kind that compels a person, even if just for a short while, to lose themselves and become immersed in their surroundings. Despite this, the girl was thinking, if only one could throw away the past. The boy was deep in thought. The girl glanced at the boy's shining golden hair and whispered to herself, "How beautiful." And then she started thinking again, and the boy was thinking, until they finally sat down on one of the benches. The girl leaned back, looking at the flowers and the tip of the trees, and followed the people with her eyes. The boy took a deep breath, lit a cigarette, looked at the sky, looked at the ground, took a long puff, and finally found a way to start the conversation. "This place hasn't changed at all from years ago until now." The girl asked, "How do you know?" "When I was a child, they used to take me here to play for 2 hours a day." "Who used to take you here?" "Mostly my nanny, sometimes my mother." "Whom did you play with?" "With other kids who were taken here." "It's a beautiful place." The boy agreed, yes, and fixed his gaze on the girl's face, asking, "Whom did you go with?" "Where?" "Well, obviously, to the garden. The neighborhood kids and I were always together, but we didn't go to the garden." "In the alley?" "No, the alleys were too narrow." "Then where?" "The graveyard, behind our house." The boy, surprised, asked, "Why the graveyard? Wasn't there a garden, a small yard, a courtyard around there?" "Oh, yes, there was just one garden that we got to know later." "Well, honestly, a graveyard is also a green place with flowers and trees. It's just the name that's different." "Our graveyards, no. They were just undulating dry land where occasionally you could find a stone to sit on." "So the place where you used to play didn't have anything else?" "Of course it had. There was a mulberry tree that had the best mulberries, and I later found out why." The boy asked, "What games did you play?" "Most of all, the artist and the girl." I've never heard of this game before." It was straightforward. I would be the girl. One of the boys would be the artist. The rest were bandits and horses. We would tie a strap around the neck of each horse and give the end to its rider. The bandits would kidnap the girl. The artist would find out and come to rescue her. Did he succeed? The girl laughed and said, "Of course, he wasn't called the artist for nothing." Didn't the horses object? Apart from the girl, who was always me, the others would switch roles every day. Didn't the other girls get upset? Yes, a couple of times they even got angry. We decided to vote. Since the majority were boys, I won. Why did all the boys vote for you? Because they weren't very good at maths. The boy, surprised, asked, "What does that have to do with anything?" The thing was that our teacher had said I should give them a math lesson for an hour every day and enter the grades I gave them in the register. Where did you learn this game? Once a month, we would fill a bowl full of white mulberries and give it to the ticket taker at the movie theater. He would then say, "Quietly, front row." As soon as the door opened, we would enter and come out after the last screening. The last screening ends very late. Didn't anyone scold you? No, silly, and that wasn't even the last event of our day. Besides, my family had a particular lifestyle that I later found a name for. What? Free-range parenting. The boy asked, "What was your last program?" Watching our parents' fights, which sometimes lasted until morning. I once said to one of the kids, "How about we make tickets for the spectators?" He really liked the idea and said, "That's called innovation." But that very night, my father's shouting reached 4 graveyards away and discouraged me from my idea. The girl fell silent. The boy, with a tone and look full of sympathy, said, "Well, all parents fight. My parents sometimes wouldn't talk to each other for weeks." The girl coldly said, "I'm not denying that other parents fight." The boy felt that his comment had affirmed the girl's sense of alienation and distance. He regretted it and feared he threw the conversation off track. He lit a new cigarette and said, "You didn't tell me about the garden." The girl gave the boy a long look and scolded herself, thinking, "If you wanted to leave it halfway, why did you even start?" Then she said, "Right, the story goes like this. One day, I noticed that after school, some kids disappeared and came home much later than the rest. Gradually, their number increased until I was left alone. One day, I followed them from a distance. I saw them all go under a high wall and stop. When I got closer, I saw a girl sitting on top of the wall. But she was not like us. She was a fair-skinned girl with sun-colored hair. More importantly, it was her dress that immediately caught my eye. What did it look like? I'll never forget it. Pale blue, cinched at the waist, with short, puffy sleeves. What drew my attention was that, despite its brightness, it fit her perfectly. What were your clothes like? Our clothes fit us when their original color was no longer recognizable. Why? Because our mothers couldn't keep up with our growth, as they put it. They said, "This year you sew a dress. Next year it will be short and tight." They had found a solution for it. As a result, it looked as if we were swimming in our new clothes, and those that fit had no appeal. If I hadn't seen her, I wouldn't have realized it. Naturally, I was very upset afterwards. I thought probably all the boys standing down there wanted her to be the girl from now on. The boy said, "So everyone went there to watch the girl?" At first, I thought the same because everyone was silently staring upwards, but none of the boys tried to show off. That made me feel that this anticipation was for something more important than the girl. I realized that this thing, whatever it was, had made the children impatient and had come down from the sky. The girl had her palms on the edge of the wall under her knees and alternately brought one of her legs forward and then struck the wall hard with her heel. Her gaze seemed to be in the distance, but she was sneaking a peek at everyone. Then, when she was sure that everyone's interest had peaked, she took her hands from under her legs, put them in her pocket, and pulled out a candy, showing it off so that we could all see. She placed it on the edge of the wall and repeated this 2 or 3 times until she was done. There were fewer candies than the children, but they were in very beautiful colors: red, blue, yellow, purple, green, orange. She was very meticulous and patient in arranging them. She changed the position of each candy 2 or 3 times, and during all this time, she didn't even glance at us. It was as if we didn't exist. After she finished arranging, she turned her head and looked at the children standing at attention with a triumphant smile. She turned back towards the candies, reached for one, and when she lifted it, it was shaped like a dove's wing. All her fingers were apart except for the index and the thumb, which were close together on the candy. She then waved her hand in the air 3 times and let go of the candy. The candy descended like an angel. No, angels are innocent. It came down temptingly. Before it hit the ground, it winked, tickled, invited. In short, it promised each child that it would be theirs alone, and then it landed on the ground. Then the children rushed at it, pushing and shoving each other, scratching, fighting, their clothes dirty and torn, until finally one of them got it in his mouth. The girl played with her hair, delighted, and laughed hysterically. She repeated this until she reached the last one, which was red. Throughout all this, I stood aside and just watched. This time she aimed in such a way that the candy fell right in front of my feet. The children came rushing, but I shouted, "Anyone who comes close gets a 0 in math." My threat worked. No one dared come forward. To avoid temptation, I stepped on it and crushed it. Then we all headed home. The girl was saying things loudly that we didn't understand. I went straight to my mother and asked her, "Mama, do we have any candy?" My mother, without looking up, said, "No." "How come we never have anything, but others do?" "I don't know anyone in the neighborhood who has candy." And then, as if suddenly realizing something, she looked up. In her eyes, there was anger, hatred, and pity. "Don't tell me!" I sensed danger and ran away. But I heard her threatening voice shouting, "If you go there again, I'll break your legs!" The boy asked, "So you never went again?" The girl smiled triumphantly and said, "I did. I did several things at once. I went there myself. I prevented the other children from going there, and I also understood why they were different from us. How? I told my teacher that the children's math skills hadn't improved and that, in my opinion, the solution was for them to study for 2 hours a day. He, in a speech full of threats and advice, asked everyone to study math after the last period, thus leading me to my desired outcome. Those 2 hours were the same hours when the girl would come to the wall. Once I was sure of this, one day, out of sight of everyone, I went there. Despite the silence, not even a bird stirring, I was trembling with fear. I hesitated for a while, but finally, I dared to look through the keyhole. Immediately, I covered my mouth with my hand to stifle my cry of astonishment. The boy, excited, asked, "What did you see?" Until then, I only knew the mulberry tree. But there were 1,000 kinds of trees, and none of them were alike. Some had flowers, some had fruit. I wanted to put 1 or 2 of those flowers in my hair. The branches were so beautiful that I wanted to hang from them and swing, and the shade of each tree was perfect for playing marbles. I wanted to bring all the children and play the artist and the girl among the trees. In short, I wished that garden was ours. The girl, after a short pause, said, "When I looked away, something intangible inside me had broken. A pain 100 times worse than a broken leg. I was disgusted with the girl and the graveyard." That night, I asked the children to be alert and find out why they were different from us. I also took all the spools of thread from my mother's sewing bag. I had an idea. In the middle of the night, when I was sure everyone was asleep, I quietly got up and went there. I tied 3 long threads to the door handle, stretched them across the street to avoid getting caught, and then pulled each thread until it broke. With each thread that broke, the door made a noise. Immediately, the barking of dogs filled the air. Then their lights turned on, and I ran away. I repeated this until all the threads were gone. My mother was sure the spools had been stolen and said, "If I catch the thief, I'll make them regret it." The boy asked, "Did she ever catch you?" No, because something new happened that was very exciting for the mothers. What happened? One day, one of the kids brought a long, thick rope and said he had found it. Whether it was true or not, only God knew. He tied the end of the rope to the highest branch of the mulberry tree and said, "Now we'll have a competition to see who can climb to the top." It was decided that each person would try once a day, and the first to reach the knot would win. From the first day, even the most indifferent mothers spent the entire afternoon around the mulberry tree. The commotion and spectacle continued for several days, and we climbed higher each day. The boy asked, "Who finally won?" The girl looked into the boy's eyes and said, "You might not believe it, but I won. I climbed right to the top of the tree." It was an incredible feeling, perhaps mostly because I understood how that girl felt. She was right. Looking down from above was exhilarating. Everything seemed small and insignificant. It was hard to believe that feelings with all their depth could exist in these insignificant beings. Before the euphoria of climbing a few meters made me forget that I was one of them, I came down. When I touched the ground, I realized from the redness of my mother's cheeks that the real competition had been between the mothers. I have no doubt that if I had told the story of the spools right there, my mother would have forgiven me without question. But the story didn't end there. The news of our rope climbing spread throughout the neighborhood. One day, one of the kids brought news that a mother from 2 neighborhoods down had told his mother that if their children also ate those mulberries, they would undoubtedly perform better than our children. I asked what he meant by those mulberries. He replied, "Don't you see how big and juicy our mulberries are? Well, the reason is that this is a graveyard." The girl fell silent. Her face had turned pale. She took a handkerchief from her bag and wiped the sweat from her forehead and temples, then continued. From that day on, the taste in my mouth changed. It was like the taste of something nauseating, like dead flesh. And it wouldn't go away no matter what. I felt I had to vomit everything I had eaten up to that day to escape that condition. I wanted to throw up my entire being. Eventually, we ended up at the doctor's office. After examining me, the doctor sent me out to talk to my mother. When I got tired of waiting, I went back behind the door to call my mother. I heard the doctor saying, "Mulberries in the morning, mulberries at noon, mulberries at night, nothing but mulberries." My mother interrupted him sharply, saying, "Doctor, if you think mulberries are problematic, then let me tell you, children 2 neighborhoods down only eat grass." I immediately moved away from the door. A week later, my mother summarized her beliefs and those of all the neighboring women in one sentence, saying, "Why do you do things that make people cast the evil eye on you?" I was sure that no one had understood the real reason behind it. The boy asked, "What was the reason?" I had realized that the fruit should belong to the garden, not to the graveyard. The boy asked, "So you don't have that feeling anymore?" The girl ignored the boy's question and said, "When I returned to the other kids, the rope had been untied, but all of them knew bits and pieces about them. One of them said, 'My dad says it's all because of this black gold.' Another interrupted, saying, 'Nonsense! My dad says black gold is the mother of all other golds.' I was surprised and asked, 'If that's true, why are they so much better off than us?' He said, 'It's not about the gold.' Then what is it about? The license to oppress. What is this, the license to oppress? He replied that it was some kind of imposition. But he didn't know what imposition meant and just guessed it was a profession. I asked, why don't our fathers learn this profession? He said, I don't know about that. The other children didn't know either. That night, we pondered over the license to oppress and imposition until morning. The following nights were the same. The boy asked, what conclusion did you reach? The conclusion was that all the children decided that when they grew up, they would learn imposition so they could obtain the license to oppress. We only had one small problem. We didn't know where imposition was taught. Finally, one night, one of the kids came with a sullen face and said, "It's all a waste of time. Imposition means bullying. It's a profession that they essentially invented because of us and don't want us to understand its meaning. Only among themselves, whoever is more skilled gets more of the license to oppress." We asked, what is this invention based on? They say turning black gold into actual gold is hard work. Why don't they do it? because they want to increase their own gold. We also want to play in the garden. Why are you saying irrelevant things? I said, it's you who doesn't know the relevance. If they leave, the garden becomes empty, and once the garden is empty, it becomes ours. The boy asked, did the garden eventually become yours? It was too late for us, but the children after us played in the garden, and at first we were very happy about it. What happened then? Little by little, we felt lonely. Why? Because the graveyard was far from the minds of the new children. That's a good reason for you to forget it too. The girl, surprised, asked, can you forget this garden? The boy, after some hesitation, said, no, but maybe the reason is... The girl interrupted him and said, the reason is that it's part of your past, and the past is inseparable from the present. Not knowing the graveyard means not knowing me. The boy said, maybe you'll never find anyone who knows the graveyard. The girl, looking deeply into the boy's hopeful eyes, said bitterly and decisively, as long as they are so skilled in obtaining the license to oppress, there will always be children somewhere in the world playing in graveyards. The boy understood everything from the girl's tone and said no more. When they stood up to walk down the street, the sun had set. At the end of the road, before they parted forever, the girl said to the boy, be sure that I love you as much as that red candy. And then she quickly walked away to search for him in another corner of the world.